Welcome aboard, Iron City Rail fans. You've tuned in to the Iron City Roundhouse Report, the podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of locomotives, rolling stock, and the rich history and current state of railroading. I'll be one of your hosts. My name's Brad Williamson, and our other host is my good friend Patrick Moore. And whether you're a seasoned model railroader, a history buff, or just someone who loves the sound of a passing train, you're in the right place. We're proudly affiliated with the Iron City N-Scale Facebook group, but don't let the name fool you. We cover all scales from Z to G and everything in between. We'll be exploring the vibrant railroading scene of western and central Pennsylvania, from the mighty steel giants of the past to the intricate layouts of today. Expect in-depth discussions, interviews with experts, and plenty of stories from the rails. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and enjoy the Roundhouse Report, a podcast of Iron City, by Iron City, and for Iron City. And welcome once again, Iron City train fanatics. You're here now for episode number 3 of the Iron City Roundhouse Report. We got a pretty good show again in store for you, and I will turn it over to my good buddy and co-host, Patrick Moore, so he can start to tell you a bit about what we have planned for episode number 3 of the Iron City Roundhouse Report podcast. Thank you very much for listening.
Hey, Brad. We got a great show tonight, man. We got another set of yard masters. Can you believe it? Another group of volunteers actually said they'll do it.
Yeah. I thought maybe we'd be scrounging after that first episode, but we've gotten some pretty good feedback, and we thank everybody for their feedback, both constructive criticism and for the praise. It's always helpful. For us to know what you guys like, and also for us to know what you don't like, so that we can try to make some improvements. The big thing we're working on right now, as we learn the process of creating a podcast, is we're just trying to figure out how to get better balance in our sound, because when you have different people signing on from different locations, using different equipment, and I have a big mouth, so my voice is usually pretty loud on the podcast, and I can understand, somebody driving around in a car having their windows blown out by me, and then they turn it down, and then somebody else who has a more normal speaking voice, it sounds too quiet. That's 32 years of projecting my voice as a physics teacher working against me, I guess.
That's okay, Brad. Hey, Brad, we got a great special guest tonight, Chris Ketch.
And you're looking forward to talking to Chris. He's always interesting to talk to.
And so, Brad, we're going to do a couple of things with him. He was super interested in talking about his backstory, and I think you and I link our layouts with him, so that's going to be a great conversation. But we're also going to talk to him tonight about he's moving. He just moved. He got a new home, and a lot of people have a lot of conversations on our web page. On our Facebook page about moving their layouts and the details into that, and the pain and the suffering that goes into moving. And I'm one to know. I've moved my Panhandle division now 5 times. It is difficult, and so we're going to talk.
And your layout was designed to be like kind of modular, portable, mobile from the start. But even so, I know it's hard. I can remember your last move. Something happened with like the stuff, the ballast or something, because of the vibrations moving across the road. Didn't it crack up a lot of your ballast, and it went all over the place and stuff?
People, you talk about your inventory and taking pictures and make sure you move everything back correctly, but you don't. It's the damage report. I feel like I'm on a Star Trek episode. It was a damage report when you lay everything back in, and your glue technique, right? Oh, that's a sham. That's a sham. My glue technique is not good. And so we're going to talk to Chris a little bit tonight about that, and we're also going to talk to him a little bit about, man, he has jumped not knee deep. He's jumped
neck deep
in T-track. And I want to talk to him a little bit. I just saw he finished up a project
I
just
believe
recently.
I believe he's also in some kind of a build off to build like a mini layout or something. We'll have to ask him about. I think I think Kevin Squire, our Iron City layout planner, is involved in that too. I don't know if it's some kind of competition that they're in or just a building challenge.
Like some kind of
But
mini shelf or something like that, or if I remember
something,
correctly.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
We'll have
yeah,
to be sure to ask Chris about that because I'm sure he knows more about it than you and I put together. So.
yeah. So I'm looking for a great special guest tonight, and I think he's got a lot to talk about. You know, that the backstory alone is going to be fascinating because I really like to hear how he did that. And he was Brad, if you remember, he's the third person between you and I that really wanted to get involved in our West Penn historical link up and everything, and bring his own his own line into ours. And I thought that was
Yeah.
great. I can't wait
The
to
ne-
talk
and,
to him about it.
right, and the neat thing about that line, which I don't want to give too much away, but like and steal Chris's thunder, but it was an actual real railroad that ran uh, not far from the area that I model, like up in the wilds of Pennsylvania, up near Driftwood, that area. But it didn't run into the diesel era. It was, I believe, it ended. I don't know that they ever had diesels, but again, Chris will know more about that. So it
Right.
is actually a real railroad, but he takes the prototype freelance approach and brings it forward into the diesel era. So it is. That's going to be a very interesting special guest to talk to. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, Brad. It's that time. Let's go ahead with the Roundhouse Report, and let's go ahead around our Iron City page, and let's talk about some posts. Which one do you have first for us tonight, Brad?
The first one that kind of jumped off the computer screen at me was a pretty cool post by a member named Scott Woodell, Wooddell. I don't know him that well. I think he might be relatively new, at least, I haven't seen too many posts from him. But he posted a really, really cool not video, but a really cool picture, I think, of his layout with some switch engines on it. He had a bunch of NW2 switch engines that he painted for his, speaking of freelance railroads, he posted this picture had these NW2s painted for his Deer Creek and Susquehanna Railroad, which, it's a picture, looks like it's down by the engine house fueling facility on his layout. And there are, I see six, diesel switchers, the NW2s, and then it looks like there's a little steam switcher in the background as well. So I just thought that, that was a really cool photo of those little diesel switch engines, and just a neat scene that he put together there with that engine service facility. So, maybe in the near future we can get some more. Scott, if you're listening, love to see more photos and even videos of your layout. It looks like a really, really interesting setup you got there. So that
So
was one. That was my first one.
yeah, I was going to say that also caught my eye too, Brad. I saw that one, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a good one." It was nice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Brad, every Saturday morning, I get the cup of coffee and I hit the Iron City page, and I know what's lurking, and that's Tom Placier,
Oh yeah.
either photos or videos. And I get that coffee and I hit that button, and I'm always so happy to see that because Brad, I think you and I talked about this once. The magic of, I call it the crawl, the very slow, methodical scene of like he's got an Alco coming in there at probably 3 miles an hour, smooth,
Yep.
connecting into a couple of box cars into an industry scene. On this one he posted on Saturday was an OHI. His are so realistic and so slow, and they connect and then they move out, and just they're at the right speeds. There's no jerking. There's no, you know what I mean? And it's just
Yeah, he's got the
unbelievable.
operations thing down pat. Just
Yeah,
fan. I can remember. I thought the same thing when he did. He did an Iron City showcase for us.
absolutely.
Well,
Yep.
what was that? A couple years ago now, or maybe last year? And I just thought, oh man, that just completely captures the look and feel, of a line that has online industries on it. Just very cool.
In his area, I believe it is the Chillicothe area, and what I always love too, and I love to see the cats on a line. So he's got that Chessie system on there too, and I don't think people understand the track work and how clean your track has to be to run a smooth operation like that with no jerks, no hesitations, no derailment, and to run at that such slow speed. And I'm sure and I believe his DCC is just really nice, man. It's outstanding work. And the angle, like the road is at an angle and you're sitting there looking at it and you feel like you're just sitting in your car or off the side of the road with the radio, kind of just rail fanning that morning with his videos and pictures. And he was also the May cover photo contest winner. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Thanks, Tom, for sharing your stuff with us. It's always great to see that. Your beautiful layout, beautiful working layout, like you were saying, track work and electrical conductivity is all first rate. So we always appreciate hearing from Tom and seeing his work. It's just good stuff.
Okay, Brad, who else you got tonight?
All right, the other one that it was just posted 25 minutes ago, believe it or not.
Hot off the press.
Yes, our good friend, sticking with the switch engine theme, our good friend from down south, George Hall, posted a really neat close-up shot of a Boston and Maine SW1. And I believe he custom painted that. Yeah, it was originally in Penn Central livery, it says, and he got rid of the Penn Central and replaced it with the Boston and Maine. Just did a beautiful job on it, and you can tell George isn't afraid to show his work because he zoomed right in on that. Where if there's any mistakes, they're going to show up, and he just did a beautiful job on that, and really a cool addition again to our Facebook page on the Iron City. It's always great to see really good work done like that, and that engine to me just looked really, really sharp. I don't know what it is about switch engines this week, Pat, but I'm kind of in a switch engine mood.
I noticed that, and I just saw. As you were talking, I was scrolling. I just saw it. That's awesome. That black with that red on it, with that red sharp pin stripe on there, it looks really good.
Yeah. Hats off to you, George. Nice work on that.
So, Brad, my last one is you. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So, Brad and I have been friends for years. I rail fan his layout constantly. I actually do remote ops on Brad's layout, and he always has multiple different camera angles. But Brad, you got a new camera angle on for me, and I don't know how you got it, but you're up on the ridge line looking down on the bridge down at Driftwood, I believe.
That's right. Yep.
And that is just an outstanding new rail fan angle. And I'm just trying to figure out how you got it, where you got it, and tell me a little bit about it. That's awesome, bud.
Well, first of all, thanks, buddy. Yeah, it's funny. The way I got it is I had some of my buddies from Iron City East over here, Ricky Larson, Nick Wummer, and Neil Moniz. Were over running trains, and I just happened, those guys were running. I was just kind of walking around, and I walked back to that back section and stood there and watched as I think Neil's train came up the grade into Driftwood, and I thought, wow, that's kind of a cool angle. So I, of course, had to pull my camera out and took a video, and it looked even better on video. So I was just holding the camera at that point, but I held it so that the mountain right beside the high bluff that overlooks the town of Driftwood, very small town in the wilds of PA. But it looked like, you could see the mountain off to the side, so it looked like you were kind of standing on top of a mountain. In reality, I was holding the camera. But then I got the bright idea. If you remember that hillbilly styrofoam holder I made for my camera years ago,
oh, yeah.
I took that to new levels. I'll have to show you. In order to get the height, I just busted up a whole bunch of 2-inch foam and built like a platform. to sit
Okay.
to sit the camera with the holder up there now. So I don't, because I want to try to. It's nice to be able to have a still, because I tend to move around and stuff,
Yeah.
and you want to have to make it look better. You want to have a a still solid camera. So yeah, I used that old. I made that probably 3-4 years ago now, the holder for it, but I just had to build a platform. I have so many scraps of insulation foam from all the building I've done recently that it wasn't hard. I just cut a bunch of them up, and it stands probably 8 inches, maybe 8-10 inches above the water level part of my layout, but it overlooks Cinemahoning Creek, which runs it's actually the Bennett's branch of Cinemahoning Creek that runs through Driftwood and looks down on the bridges that go over it. And I just thought it was a cool view of the cars coming around the curve there, the
Yeah.
trains coming around the curve at Driftwood.
If anybody's ever driven 99 heading up to State College, it feels like you're up on 99 or something looking down. You know what I mean? Like it feels,
Yeah.
you got that feeling. Or if you're up on like, like in Virginia on a highway up on the Blue Ridge Parkway or something, that's how you feel when you're up at that angle. Just a really good, look down on your layout. I think it's just spectacular.
Yeah, and the other place I got the idea from too, when Todd, our friend, our last special guest, Todd Treaster, was here, probably a month or two ago now. He wanted a picture of me, but he took it so that the camera was up high over top of my layout in the Bennettsburg area where I have the one station that I forget somebody asked me to post this week. But Todd took it like a panoramic overhead shot. I thought that looks pretty cool. And then when I was standing over here, I thought that looks cool too. And you don't think to do that too often when you're taking pictures and videos of your layout, to take it from a high up vantage point. I just
Right.
thought it looked
Yeah.
kind of cool and thought I would share it. So I'm glad people enjoyed that. It's always nice to get that feedback.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, Brad, you and I will be back shortly after this break with our special guest, Chris Ketch. So we'll be right back. Okay, Iron City, we're back, and we have our special guest tonight, Chris Ketch, and I'll pass it over to Brad, and he'll get the introductions going.
Yeah, we are very pleased tonight to have our good friend Chris Ketch, who has joined us at several of our events now with the Iron City T-Track layout. Has a cool Buffalo and Susquehanna layout that we want to talk to him. Or I don't know. I know you have some locomotives, but we'll let Chris describe that, and some other stuff that Chris is involved in right now. That's a pretty cool projects that we'll be discussing with him tonight, as he is our now second special guest on the Iron City Roundhouse Report. So, Chris, welcome.
Hopefully not the last.
Yeah,
Well,
hopefully not the last.
That's what Pat and I always say after each podcast. We just hope we don't get canned or even get jail time for something that we did wrong. But yeah, this is episode 3 of the Iron City Roundhouse Report, and we are thrilled to have Chris with us. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be the second guest. I got a tough act to follow. You guys put me after Todd Treaster, of all people. Thanks a lot.
That was the least we could do, Chris. So, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into model railroading?
Well, I don't know how I got into model railroading. Earliest memories about 5 years old, down at my great-grandparents' house in Curwensville, Pennsylvania. I remember my parents got me the Bachmann Highballer train set, the 2 Santa Fe 4-bonnet paint scheme locomotives.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been in N scale ever since. So that's going on 35 plus years probably.
Oh, wow.
Those Bachmann sets are good memories for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
At our local Hobby Lobby, they have the Yard Boss, which is another one of their sets. And every time I go in there, I take a picture of it and ask Richard Shirey if he wants me to pick that up for him, and he never says he wants it. I don't understand. But yeah, that's a cool early memory to have. Now, was that an N scale Bachmann set you're referring to there?
Yep.
Okay, so you've been N scale basically from the
I've been
start of your career then, huh?
diehard N scale, even though I consider myself a scale fluid, if
Yeah.
if that's the right term for today's society. I got
So
a
you
little bit
jump
of
in all of
everything.
them. Yeah,
I
you're
call,
in everything. Yeah.
I call it scale confused, but that's that's all right.
Now, just recently, I joined a HO scale switching club. They got a modular layout in the guy's basement, and I wanted to get into more operations before I started building the big home layout.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
So, Chris, tell us a little bit about your origins for your N scale and what made you, as you're growing up and getting into your own, what made you go after the layout that you had designed your first layout,
Okay,
and your backstory.
so growing up, my grandfather had a farm on one side of Ransomville, and the back property line butted up against the Hojack line. For those that don't know, the Hojack line was a branch line originally of the RW&O, Rural Waterstown and Ogdensburg Railroad, that ran from Oswego, New York, all the way to Niagara Falls. And so just growing up, knowing that the railroad tracks are there, I started to take an interest in it. And, Saturdays I'd ride my bike down to the Historical Society, just try to learn anything I could and, browse the internet and see what was out there. There ain't a lot, I'll tell you that much.
So Chris, you still live in New York, as far as what part of New York do you live in again?
It's below the Niagara Escarpment, so like northeast of Niagara Falls, about 20 minutes. And I'm about 10 minutes from the shores of beautiful Lake Ontario.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I didn't realize you were that far. You're not that far from Canada, then, are you?
Nope.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
25 minutes to the border bridge.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Very cool.
And so with
So
growing up,
that probably explains your interest in the Ontario Northland, then, doesn't it?
that's way up north. That's up in Canada.
Yeah, isn't that the caboose that you had me decal for you a couple of years back? Was it Ontario Northland, or do I have the wrong?
That was my freelance road, the Ontario Western.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
no problem.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yep. So just then Grandpa's farm, and then growing up, I reading Model Railroader, reading articles about the Utah Belt, the Allegheny Midland, the V&O, all that got my, the brain juices flowing. So like, I could probably, do a what if the Hojack line was still running. And then it just kind of took off from there. It's been probably an idea of mine for 25 years or better, probably now.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm just finally in a spot where I can bring it to fruition.
Very cool.
And so with the colors and the paint schemes and everything like that, how did you come up with that? Was that something that they had, or is that something that you came up on your own?
Okay, so for the Ontario Western, it's actually based off of kinda a couple different paint schemes. One is the Ontario Midland, which still exists today. Let me back up a little bit here. In 1979, Conrail wanted to get rid of pretty much the whole Hojack line, and it was broken up. My section that ran through Ransomville, Wilson, where I live, Dyer County said they didn't want it, but there's a section from about Rochester heading east towards Oswego that still had a good amount of traffic on it, and they opened up the line. So there was the Ontario Midland, which ran that section. Then there was another section called the Ontario Eastern, owned by the same company, that ran up a little bit more north and east at the other end of the lake. So that's where the Ontario lines comes from. And in my history, the Ontario Western was opened up. Niagara County said, yeah, they want to keep the rail service because this is where on the west end most of the businesses were still located. So I took a little bit. They had a what was that? A high cab or a high hood RS 36, I think. And they had the safety stripes that I follow. And then one of the other locomotives I had that took inspiration from was the Livonia, Avon, and Lakeville. A lot of people know that one because it's an all Elko road. There's a ton of them still running up here. a lot of C424s, and they have a high hood C420. So in my history, we bought that locomotive from the LA&L.
Okay.
So that's still in the library. I just relettered it. So that's where
what,
most of the information, inspiration comes from.
okay. And what about your Buffalo Susquehanna? Where did that come from?
So that came about. There's a fella on Facebook who was heavily influenced by the V&O, like so many freelancers were. And the Buffalo Susquehanna was a coal and wood hauling operation down in northeast-ish, north central Pennsylvania that ran from south of Du Bois a little ways up through Gallatin into New York and on to Buffalo. So his what if is if that line had stayed in operation. And the way I spun it was he was going to try N scale. He sold off a whole bunch of his locomotives. I bought some, Brad bought some, a whole bunch of people bought some because he repainted a whole bunch of them. So I bought it and I was like, how can I tie this in? Well, in the early 80s, they built a power plant up here on the lake. And so instead of coming off the Monongahela like it actually did, the Somerset Railroad had, I don't know, a couple strings of Bethgon coal porters. So I was like, I can tie this in. The Ontario lines will buy the Buffalo and Susquehanna. And then instead of coming off the Monongahela, it'll come off the BNS. And I can get the coal up to New York for the power plant that way. So it'll interchange the train at Ansonia and then come up the Corning secondary up through Geneva to the main line. Then at Rochester, it'll cut across on the Falls Road to Niagara Falls and up to the power plant on the lake.
Okay.
That is a cool backstory, and it's awesome. It's just awesome to see the amount of research and planning and tracing out the route that that's interesting to me because that's kind of what I did with my layout, and the cool thing is that some of the names that you're mentioning, the town of Ansonia, which it's hard to even call it. It's so small, but we used to go canoeing up there on Pine Creek.
Is it bigger or smaller than Oval?
Oh, I think it may even be smaller than Oval, believe it or not. Yeah.
Just a wide spot in the road.
Yeah, you bet.
So it was really fascinating, Chris, because when you came out and said, "Hey, I have this line," and Brad and I were like, "Wow, it would really connect," because what's neat is my Panhandle does not connect it to your BNS, but my dad's is refurbishing right now. It's HO, but we're renaming that the Valley Branch or Valley Division, and that is the old Lehigh Valley and up to Niagara, and that's where those two lines meet. And so that was great for the West Bend interchange with the Buffalo. And then Brad came out of nowhere one day with some of those locomotives, and he hooked them up to the West Penn, and next thing I know, there's a video of those two railroads running together. I was like, man, isn't it great when two modelers or three or four modelers get together and they start interlocking their layouts together.
Yeah.
It just stretches the story. You know what I mean? It just makes for great backstory.
The gentleman's name who painted them was Dennis something or other.
Dennis Llewellyn.
Llewellyn, yeah.
Yep.
I had him actually paint because you put me in contact with him. I just wanted some Buffalo and Susquehanna decals. And he said, well, I have those. I don't really sell those to people, but I'd be willing to paint one for you. And I'm like, heck yeah. So I sent him one of my SD90 Max, and he put the Buffalo and Susquehanna paint job on it.
Yeah, it turned out really good.
Yeah, he did it. And then the funny part is, you mentioned he decided to get out of N scale, so he sent me a Facebook message and said, are you interested in any or all of my Buffalo and Susquehanna locomotives? And I said, well, yeah, what do you, and when he told me the price, it's like, yep, I'll take the whole shooting match. Because they're all very well, I mean, it's cool. There's some GP30s and I mean, just all kind of different. So yeah, very, very cool. That's just one of the neat stories of how you can meet people through this hobby. We both met Chris and then Chris introduced me to Dennis, and I ended up with a bunch of cool locomotives as a result.
Well, and then bad Facebook is sometimes it actually comes out good.
Absolutely. And then the backstories when they match by magic or just by happenstance. And the next thing you know, you see West Penn boxcars on someone else's layout rolling through a video. You're like, wait a minute, that matches and actually makes sense. So
And before we leave this, I'm just trying to remember. I believe the Buffalo and Susquehanna would have interchanged with my line, well, the Buffalo line up in Emporium. Is that right?
Around there, Keating.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
it actually crossed over the Pensy down at, I think what is the low grade line at Driftwood?
Yes, yep. And that's that low grade line is where my fictional PRR main line runs. It runs up the Buffalo line and then at Driftwood diverges and heads out the low grade. So yeah, that's like a match made in heaven between our two layouts.
Yeah, so I kind of route the coal traffic to New York Central via Esonia. Then like the general freight traffic goes over to the Pensy at Keating.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome. And I do have Keating modeled too, so yep.
Yeah. That was one of the things I was trying to work in, because originally I was thinking that the Penn Central was going to stay alive. Then talking with you got the Pensy. I was like, well, I can't really do Penn Central, so that's why I went with the New York Central, and that's why I'm decaling those C30-7s I got from Norfolk Southern.
Yeah, they're sharp.
Yeah. So, Chris, let's switch gears a little bit. We know you just had a we know you just had a big move, and you tore down your old layout, or I think you sold it, maybe.
I still got it.
You still got it.
Selling it. Had a lot of tire kickers.
That's typical.
That's typical. And now you got a new home, and you're moved into and you're starting your new layout. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your thoughts were about moving into a new home and a new layout, and a little bit about your layout design, if you can.
Well, I tell you what, I got more trained that I know what to do with. I spent more time moving the train stuff over than I did my clothes, my bed, and all that stuff. 'Cause I got a lot of it between T-track modules and layout projects that I started and didn't finish. And my layout is actually still at my parents' house, the 3x5 Midland Junction layout, along with half or probably 3/4 of my rolling stock yet, and my giant collection of model railroader magazines. So yeah, moving train stuff is a pain in the ass.
Oh yeah, it is.
But the house, it's a small house, 852 square feet, I think is listed as, but it's got a decent sized loft, and I can build a 23 foot by about 12 foot wide layout.
Well, that's a nice size. Yeah.
So it's and the only problem is it's got a pitched roof. So I gotta squeeze it in a little bit.
Are you going to install air conditioning up there?
I'm gonna have to, because it's starting to get warm up here.
I was going to say I would melt in an attic loft type thing.
I got
that's why mine
running full blast right now.
Yeah, that's why mine's in the basement.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have a basement.
Yep, I understand.
But I'm gonna build it like open grid benchwork, about 50 inches high. It's gonna go around the walls, through a closet, around the other walls. Then I gotta come back across the staircase that's right in the center of the house. So it'll be pretty cool. 2 staging yards. The main yard will be a suspension bridge. Then from there, you come around to one side, it'll be the Hojack line, Ransomville, Alberta, Wilson. Then you go across the staircase, and that'll be what I'm calling Lock City. It's based after Lockport on the Falls Road. Because in my world in 1996, New York Central wanted to spin off the Falls Road secondary, so we picked it up instead of Genesee Valley. So Lock City, that'll have it's more of a urban switching. You got a electric steel plant, just some other industries, a yard, engine service, stuff like that. Harrison Radiator, it's a GM plant. So from staging, New York Central trains will bring interchange to Lock City. Then from there, you'll have a road train out to Oswego, and local switching plus a couple locals leaving the yard. Then the other half will just be the sleepy little Hojack line running a local out of a suspension bridge down the hill to service all the fruit and cold storages. I think there's a chemical plant Mayer Brothers apple cider plant and a Bird's Eye frozen food plant. Then plus the Somerset power plant, that'll be represented by a couple of tracks in the small staging yard across the stairs. So it's going to be a project, but I hope to start the bench work this summer.
To me, though, that's so cool, all the planning that you put into it, because that just, to have a plausible backstory like that, it just helps so much in knowing what industries you're going to put on there, because you're running your fictional layout through areas where there actually were rail lines. So that makes that part of it kind of a no-brainer. So that's really neat that you did that. And Pat and I are both always fascinated by the backstories of people's layouts. So that's right up our alley, right, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, do you have are you doing this in phases? Like, do you want to have projected, hey, I'd like to have track down in phase 1, or I'd like to have one section finished or scenery done in one corner or something like that with a timeline? Or how are you going about this? Because it is a hobby. I mean, you don't want to burn yourself out or anything like that.
During the winter, I do a lot of the model train stuff.
Yeah.
During the summertime, I'm involved pretty heavy in tractor pulling in the area.
Right.
So summertime's usually taken up with that. But if I got time, I'll do something. Like I've been working on that little layout, for the last couple of weeks. So I try to do something at least every day. So, but yeah, just this summer, because what I'm waiting on is PICO, not PICO, PICO, PECO, the track people, are supposed to be coming out with a American Standard Code 55 track.
Okay.
And if anybody that knows me knows how much I love PICO track. And so once I get the bench work up, it'll probably be a little bit of a hiatus until they announce that they're actually coming out with that track. Because I want to get a little bit, finer tie spacing and whatnot for American track than what theirs is based off of in the UK.
Yeah, I totally understand. So that we're going to ask the yard masters a question like that in a little bit. So I'm going to put that in my pocket that Chris is the Pico guy. So,
so Chris, tell us a little bit about that, the build off or whatever it is with that little layout. Yeah. I know you and Kevin Squire, I think pretty sure he's involved with that too.
Yeah, he started one too. So there's a gentleman from the United Kingdom, Budget Model Railways on YouTube. And so in England, they don't have a lot of space like us Americans do. So they build what they call exhibition layouts, which are small layouts, usually, something one person could handle, fit in their little hatchback car, or a large group get together and build modular layouts. But, so they take them to more shows than what we do on like an individual basis. So instead of having large home layouts. So he, tells you different ways to build layouts, how he does stuff, and he makes a lot of little projects. So he put it out a challenge to build a layout on in units that haven't won World War II twice, metric. I think 23.5 centimeters by 60 centimeter floating shelf. So got to take that size, but in the land of where we measured cheeseburgers by bald eagles, it's about 24 inches by 10 inches. So you take that shelf, and the big thing is budget. So like I got mine on 50% off. So you could pick up one of these shelves for $15 at Hobby Lobby when they're half off, trying to blow stuff out. And, you try to use as much secondhand stuff as you can just to keep the cost down. You can only use 2 turnouts at maximum. And I got mine secondhand off eBay. And you can have a little, what I call a fiddle stick. It's about a 2-foot length of track that sticks out the end that I built. And, just build a little layout, and then you can upload it to his website. And there's no prize or nothing. It's just, hey, see what you can do in this space and with this, and keep it under $100. He's built 2 actually. He's building one in 00, which is like a little bigger than HO scale wise, and he's building a N scale one. So in metric, those shelves are a little smaller. He actually has a full loop on that shelf.
Oh, wow.
So I think it's like 9 1/4, 3/8 maybe, 5/8 at the most by 60, which is roughly around like 23 something.
And that to me just illustrates the awesomeness of the model railroad hobby. There's just so many entrance points and different ways that you could participate in the hobby of modeling trains. So many different scales, so many different, you can do it with modular layouts like we do with the T-Track. You can do it with these tiny layouts and I know, speaking of Kevin, he also has that little Ingle Nook switching puzzle type layout. And,
Yep.
it's all model railroading. And there's just so many different ways to get into it that just, to me, it just involves more people because like you said, people who don't have, a lot of extra space in their house, this is just a great way to have a running layout. And it doesn't have to be, this is coming from a guy who has a large basement layout, but you do not have to have a large basement layout to be in the hobby and be, very good at and be a very good modeler and have a really cool layout set up in a small space. If that's what you want to do, it's just as every bit as legitimate as the classic basement empire for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's got 2 turnouts on it. You can shuffle cars in and out just like you're operating a real thing.
And Chris, you've published all this on the Iron City Facebook page, so people can actually see what you've been working on, correct?
Yeah. If you go into the search button on our Facebook page and just type my name in, it should pop up.
Excellent.
Make sure you do that with your layout up in your loft too to show us your progress. That's
I
always.
love posting pictures.
And other people who are just getting into the hobby, I have found out learn a lot. Like you post stuff, just thinking you're posting it and it's not a big deal to you, but somebody who's just getting into the hobby thinks, wow, that's a cool idea and a neat way to do that. So it's always it just. And the other thing that happens, I noted, is when somebody posts something cool, it inspires me to get off my duff and get down in the layout room and start building something. And that's just a great part of the community that we have here. There's so many people doing so many cool things that it just brings us all together and pushes us forward for sure.
You'd be amazed what you can do in just an hour a night.
Yeah, I don't know if you know our good friend Tom Jacobs, that he kind of pioneered that catchphrase, an hour a day. Just put an hour a day in and you can get, you can accomplish a lot with just 1 hour a day. So,
Well, Chris, we want to thank you very much for being our second guest here on the Iron City Roundhouse Report. I'm sure we'll have you back. We've already talked about having you back as a yard master.
Oh, yeah.
And we can't wait to have your opinion on, I know you work on a lot of stuff, so wait to have your opinion on that. So thank you so much for coming on tonight. Welcome back, everybody. And we're here in my favorite part of the segment, the Yard Masters. And we have a great group of Yard Masters tonight. And I'm going to pass it over to Brad, and he'll introduce our great panel this evening.
Okay, thanks, Pat. With us tonight, as Pat said, a great group of our Iron City N-Scale brethren here. We first of all have Jimmy Braum from the Pittsburgh area. Jimmy is an HO and N-Scale modeler. He has a home HO layout based on the Wheeling and Lake Erie, and then he also participates in T-Track with N-Scale. So we have Jimmy Braum. Then we have Fran Resch from up in New England, and Fran is currently building a basement empire N-Scale layout, and I think he has several different roads that run on it. Maybe we can ask Fran that when we get started here. And then we also have Chuck Rockwell, all the way up from the Sunshine State of Florida. Chuck is in the process of building he built a barn or a shed, a big, I don't know, I guess it would be like it's more of a barn, a small barn or a really big shed. And he's in the process of building his own. He has a freelance line that he named after himself, Rockwell Railroad. And he's in the process of building that layout right now out in this garage down there in Florida. So those are the 3 yard masters we have. We're excited to have you guys with us and looking forward to a good discussion tonight. So back to you, Pat.
Okay. Hey, guys, thanks so much for coming on tonight. And I think we have some great questions. And from our first Yard Master question and answer, we had a lot of great feedback that came back on to our Iron City Facebook group page. And I encourage everybody, if you hear questions tonight that you want to follow up with and post on, we really encourage you to keep that conversation going. We had some really good feedback. Brad and I were very happy to see that conversation keep going, and it allows everyone to kind of give their opinions too. Everyone becomes a yard master on the Iron City, if you like it or not.
And that fits in right with what our vision was for starting this podcast. We wanted it to be an extension or a supplement to, however what you want to look at, to the Iron City Facebook group page. And without us even really having to say that, our members kind of picked up that ball and ran with it after episode 2. So we very much appreciate that. And again, I have to say we appreciate so much everybody that takes the time to listen and download. We passed the 200 download barrier this week, so that's kind of exciting for us, and just love bringing this to you. And again, we've said it before, but any suggestions you have, we're basically just rookies at producing our own podcast. So we've gotten a lot of good suggestions from a lot of different sources. So now we're ready to crank up the this new series, the Yardmaster series, that seems to be catching on. So
all right, Brad, let me get those questions going.
You got it.
Okay, here we go. Okay, Jimmy, the first one goes to you tonight. And I know, Jimmy, you have a pretty extensive layout that you're working on right now. All 3 of you guys do. So that's why we brought you guys on for these questions tonight. They're really, most of them are focused on building layouts and working on layouts. A couple of the questions are just more of what you guys like on different things. But the first question, Jimmy, is what track are you using? What do you seem to use, or what do you like to use? And what are you most comfortable using? And what seems to be working well on your layout?
Well, for most part, let's start with my switches first.
Okay.
I actually have a mix of Atlas custom lines that I'm slowly swapping out and replacing with, I think it's Masterline. There's Pico, and then I'm actually as well in the process of replacing the Atlas ones, the old Atlas ones, with custom built ones from Fast Tracks. I build my own turnouts.
Outstanding.
Thank you. Yeah, for the track itself, I am always been a fan of Atlas Code 100. It's readily available. It's very, very forgiving for imperfect track work as well. And like I said, those 2 work the best for me.
Jimmy, what do you see like your derailment ratio when you're building track like that? What are you looking for when you're working on track with track like that?
Mostly, I mean, derailments are going to happen no matter how perfect the rail is. And for me, I'd like to keep it to an absolute bare minimum. Like, for example, a poorly thrown switch could be a derailment compared to a joint, one of the rail joiners not lining up correctly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And did our fearless leader just invent a new stat there? What was that? Derailment ratio.
Yeah, derailment ratio on.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
DRA.
DRA. I like it. I'm going to remember that one. Okay, Chuck.
Write that down.
Yeah. Chuck, what do you think on your track build?
I use mostly like Atlas Code 80, and I use a lot of Pico switches. And like in the yard, I use the Atlas custom line switches with caboose ground throws. Years ago, 2 layouts ago, it was a big garage layout, and when Atlas come out with the code 55, I tried doing that and putting the low profile flanges on and all that, and it was derailment city. So I went back to the micro trains pizza cutter flange plastic wheels, and went back to code 80 and sold all my code 55 off.
Now, Chuck, you run a little bit longer trains. So are you looking for something like when you do your rail fanning, are you running like 60, 70 car long track? Is that why you're looking for that track you build with, or are you looking for something else?
Yeah, I run long trains. It's nothing to have 5 engines and 100 cars on a train.
So you're looking for that consistency for those long stretches and stuff.
Yeah,
and pretty wide.
And I want to be able. Yes, exactly. And I want to be able. I weight my cars really good too, and I want to be able to stop the train and be able to back it up. And I like that. I like to taggle trucks like the micro trains on there. It seems to be good too. I body mounted a bunch of cars years ago, and that was
what I was about. That was what I was about to ask you, whether body mount versus truck mounted trucks.
I like the truck mounted. I seem to have less trouble with truck mounted, more trouble with the body mounted. They seem to lift off the track.
Even when you're trying to like back through a turnout, does that hold true?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I've had the opposite. If I agree, like for going around curves, this is kind of off topic. Is that all right, Pat?
I'll have to let the listeners decide on that.
Yeah. for going around curves of any size, especially if you have long equipment, truck mounted couplers to me are better. But when I try to back truck mounted couplers back into a yard through switches, a lot of times I'll get one pop off the track. But your results may vary. That's the way it goes. But yeah, that's interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this is Fran. Both of those statements seem to ring true with me. Like if you have truck mounted couplers, when you're backing up, that tension builds up in that truck. It doesn't take much to bump one off of to derail. But like on the body mount, you have to basically move the whole car.
Yeah. That could be, Chuck, because you mentioned that you weight things pretty heavy, so that might be what's helping to prevent that effect for you.
Yeah,
possibly.
I think that's true. Yeah, I weight mine a lot more than people would expect.
I do a lot of weight. This is Fran again. I do a lot of weight. Concentrate a lot on the weight distribution on my longer cars because I have a tight track with tight curves, and it makes a big difference where you put the weight on those curves, how it handles the curve. Sometimes if I want to keep a consist on there for a while and build on it, yeah, that weight makes a big difference in terms of where you distribute it.
Now, Fran, what are you using on your track? What on your layout? I know you've got a lot of industries, a lot of curves. What are you using?
Well, I'm still I still consider myself in the beginning stages of this layout, but I started with what I had. And then I also had the idea of using the code 55 up front and the code 80, both Atlas. The code 80 in the back, where the behind the scenes and where you don't see it up front. But up front, I'd say I'm at maybe 60 or 70% code 55 in the front. And I've figured out ways of transitioning from one to the other, and that seem to work out pretty well. But I have all kinds of turnouts. I have old and new Atlas turnouts. But my favorites are probably the Pico turnouts.
Okay.
And then I even have in some of the yards where things are really tight. I even have I have a ton of old Arnold Rapido couplers.
Oh wow.
The steel rails, and I find them, they work. They kind of look like, but they work very well.
Do you have trouble with them corroding at all, Fran? Do they rust?
No, that's not an issue. I don't have a problem with moisture too much in this room, but
that's good. Good.
But they clean up easy. I don't think they're stainless steel, but they're painted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Except for the top, and if you just do a routine cleaning of the top, I don't find it to be an issue. But I'm gradually turning everything, replacing a lot of the Atlas turnouts on the main lines and on the larger yards with Pico turnouts. I just find them to be the best, the most consistent. But the Atlas turnouts with the caboose throws work very well too.
Excellent. Okay, Brad, won't you finish out this topic before we get into the next one? What's your final thoughts on this track?
Yeah, my favorite has become Kato Unitrack. It's just It's just simply the most bulletproof end scale track I've ever seen. I resisted for years going with it just because I fell into the stuff you see on chat groups about how it looks toyish and stuff like that. I tell you what has really helped to change my mind. Well, first of all, the first time I bought some and tested it out, it just I especially like the concrete tie with super elevated curves. I think it just looks really good. Trains going across those and then they can't into the curve tilt because of the super elevation. But when I started, I was still kind of on the fence because I had always used Pico turnouts and Code 55 and Pico Flex Track with all the previous layouts. The North Pen that I have right now is the 5th layout that I built. 3 of them were kind of on the small side. I think the biggest one out of them was like 12 by 8 or something like that. But then I tried building a big basement empire years ago when I was in my 20s using Pico Flex, Code 55, and Pico switches. And I just got bogged down in all the soldering I'm pretty anal about having good electrical connectivity. So I was soldering every rail joint and, it just started taking so long and I eventually lost interest. And then I got married to my first wife had 3 kids. So we needed the space and the layout went bye-bye. So when I got to the North Penn, I wanted something that I could get trains running on fast so I don't lose interest in the build. And so that's why I went with Unitrack. And then Gordon Gregory started posting on our webpage, and I didn't even realize it, but his track is Kato Unitrack. And I defy anybody to look at his track and say it looks toyish. I didn't even realize that. And my friend David Morrow told me that he uses Unitrack. So I guess to sum things up, if I were going to go with something besides Unitrack, I would go back to the Pico Code 55. The nice thing about Pico Code 55 is it actually uses a Code 80 size rail, but it embeds it in the plastic ties, which makes it really strong. So the height from the tie up to the top is Code 55 height, but there's actually that little bit extra rail embedded down in those ties. So it's really strong. And as Fran mentioned, I agree with him. Their turnouts are just awesome. And they do have a greater variety of turnouts than what you get, with Kato Unitrack, which is a nice feature too. So I am presently with Kato Unitrack. If I was going to go with something else, it would be Pico Flex and turnouts.
Okay. Hey, Brad, this is Fran. I have a question regarding that. That's one thing I haven't done on this layout is transition from like Pico Code 55 to the Pico Code 80. I would imagine it's pretty easy to do, right?
It's extremely easy, yeah.
Just line right up, correct?
Yeah, yep, it would. You might have to shim a little bit under the 55 to raise it up to the same height.
Right.
But the rails are exactly the same size. So the same joiner will fit into 82. It'll slide right into, like if you try to join another company's Code 55 to Code 82, you need one of those goofy joiners that are 2 different sizes, one for the smaller rail, one for the larger.
Right.
The rail size between Pico 55 and 80 or whatever it is the rails they're the same rail. It's just the Code 82 is attached to the top of the tie. The Code 55 embeds it down in the tie. So yeah, it is easy to couple the 2 together. That's another good point.
Yeah, I think if I was to start over from scratch and had unlimited resources, that's probably the way I would go. Is Pico Code 55 up front and Pico Code 80 in the areas where I want consistency, a little more consistency. The one trouble with anybody's Code 55 is if you try to run any old rolling stock or locomotives, the big cookie cutter wheels don't play well with the Code 55.
No, they actually go down and touch the rail, so they bounce.
Yeah, they bounce and jitter, and but other than, and I've got a lot of old rolling stock, so I kind of regret that. But the other one thing I've learned is connect the Code 55 to Code 80 pretty nicely. Is if you take the Code 80, if you're going from transitioning from Code 80 to Code 55 in Atlas, you take your traditional Code 55 coupler, put it on the Code 80, and then squish the coupler down so that the Code 55 sits right on top of it and they line up almost perfectly. And then soldering,
cool.
of course.
Yeah, I've seen people do that too. Yeah, that's
well.
one way to do it. Yep.
Okay, great conversation, guys, and I hope we can pass this on into our post later on as everyone listens to this. Hey, our next question, and we'll go to Chuck first on this one. Chuck, we did a question of the week, and it was about sound. And a lot of people had some disagreements on this. A lot of people went in different directions. I know our buddy Richard always hates when I ask those questions because he's got some different theories on sound. What do you like about sound, or what would you like to see the hobby bring to the market on sound? I'll let you go first, Chuck.
All right. I like the sound. At first, working on the railroad and being on a train 12 hours a day, I didn't like sound engines. I just like running trains quiet. But now it's grown on me, and I like how you can run a train and like the idle up and down, going up and down the grades. Throttle comes out and goes in, and you got dynamic brakes and the braking itself. But some new stuff is like what Brad's got, the defect detector. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And like the Iowa scale's got the squealer for the curves and that. I think that's a game changer. That's a lot of good stuff they're putting out.
Yeah, a lot of the tower talk, a lot of the radio talk too on some of the locomotives.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good too. Now you hear that every day. You probably like, I don't want to hear Joe talk on the radio today.
Yeah.
but there's some really good stuff on there. And what would you like to see maybe come to the market? What's something Chuck, that you'd like to see come out?
Well, not sound related, but with my layout, I'd like to see smell related, like just different customers smell different.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
But not in the cab, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. But that's something. But with sound, I think they're coming right along with stuff, and it just keeps getting better and better. Like you got the sound cars, like with the reefer and stuff. That stuff's amazing.
Yeah, I know Tom Catalano was talking about like outdoor sounds, or he's going to do his New River, and he wants the sounds of the river and the the outdoor ambiance of the mountains and everything. And I have a big steel mill on my layout. I would like to have that industrial sound as the trains going by and stuff. And they're making that now. And I know Kevin has that for some of his T-track. Jimmy, what do you think about sound? What would you like to see, or what do you like is going on right now with the sound?
Well, before I get into the sound, I'd just like to make a comment about the smell. Let's see. I'd love to get one by the sheets I'm putting on my layout. So
there you go.
Cross the smell with sheets fries.
Being on a train and you go to different customers, the different customers just all smell different.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's just something that has always popped in my head that, we need that for the model railroad. And I mean, you wouldn't have to have it all the time, but if you had an operating session, you could put the different at the plywood factory and, the paper mill and just have the different smells by them somehow.
Bakery.
Exactly.
Mm. Yeah.
So go back to the sound now. I like the sound to a degree. I've had about, I think, 10 locomotives with loc sound. That was the absolute limit, and I think I had trouble hearing for about 30 minutes after I shut it all off.
Yeah.
It was just overwhelming. So, like I said, I love it, but there is a limit to what should be done with it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of guys, don't they run like just one locomotive with sound in a consist, and the other ones are just there for motor.
Mm-hmm.
That cuts down on the sound a little bit.
Jimmy, what do you want to see come to market? Anything?
Well, I wouldn't mind seeing some background sound as well. Like, since I model southwestern Pennsylvania, I'd love to hear some of it was like deer in the background, assorted animals, pretty much just background noise just to really get you into this scene.
Yeah, like a wildlife. Yeah. Okay. Fran, what do you think about sound?
Well, I think it would be a great idea to get some of the environmental sounds. I'm modeling an urban area, like the Duquesne, Braddock area of Pittsburgh, where with the mill sounds, but also I've got neighborhoods that you go through, like the street sounds. You go by a bar, you hear the bar music and noise, you know, cars beeping and honking, you know, in the more busy areas of the layout, you know, population wise. I think it would be pretty interesting. People yelling out the window at each other.
And,
Be interesting.
and Brad, what do you think? Closing this one out, sound. What do you think?
I like sound when a train's moving. I'll echo what Jimmy said about the ESU Loc sound. I was pretty big into Soundtrack Tsunami sound decoders at one point because they are easier to set up. The problem with the ones that I have is for freight operations are pretty good, but they a lot of times for some reason they start off with a jolt, and Richard Shirey found a way to program that out, and they start off real nice and like a real engine would start off. Problem is they lose their top end, so you can't. It's all right for a freight train; it's not going very fast. But I had those passenger units, those Athearn F59 PHIs with my Broadway Limited train, and they couldn't go. They couldn't even keep up to like my stack trains, so it was
Right.
too slow for a passenger train. So that's why I painted. I got 2 Kato P42s and installed the ESU Loc sound decoder, and the motor control is just outstanding with the ESU Loc sound. And now that I know that they're really complicated to program, they have index CDs, which means you have to change one CV before you can change another, and there's just no way I can't hold that much information in my brain. So I've also bought a Loc programmer, which tells you what each CV does. So now that I know what CVs do what, I just program it with my NCE system a lot of times, but I still use the Loc programmer too. But yeah, I am a big proponent of having sound in moving locomotives. I will say that when I'm in the train room working and I got a bunch of locomotives idling, after about 10 minutes of that, it will drive you half batty. So I usually shut them off, for situations like that. But yeah, I like sound equipped locomotives, especially when they're moving. The sound doesn't get to me when they're moving because it's just so cool to like Chuck was saying, you're going up a grade and you can manually notch the motor up so that you hear the motor revs coming up. But since you're on a grade, you don't want the train to pick up speed proportionally. So it's just amazing the stuff that these newer sound decoders, this current generation of sound decoders are capable of. So I like them a lot. Yeah.
I was one of the fortunate people who got a Broadway Limited that actually works well, and it like seems to ramp up and ramp down on its own when it's going up, when it feels it has some kind of a means of detecting whether the locomotive is actually under stress or not.
That's back EMF. Yeah.
It works pretty well.
Yeah. Basically what happens there when a locomotive is going down grade, it almost like regenerate it. The motor, a simplistic way to describe it, the motor almost turns into a generator from holding back. It's like when you downshift a car coming down a hill, the engine will hold the car back. An electric motor can do something similarly, but it generates a back EMF, a back voltage.
Right.
And these decoders are so sensitive now that they can sense that and make adjustments to not only the sound, but also to keep the train from running away, to keep it from picking up speed and coasting. So yeah, that's another amazing feature of them. And ESU just does that so well. It's incredible how well those decoders do that.
Okay, guys, I appreciate the conversation on our question 2. We're going to go on to question 3 now. And Fran, we're going to start with you. You have a pretty good size layout. All 3 of you guys do, and Brad, all 4 of you guys do. So we're going to talk about layout design, and we're not going to get too deep in the woods. We're just going to go in general now. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about your layout design. What system did you use, or did you just go pencil and paper, or did you use a computer? What did you do to assist you with your layout design?
Well, I keep a couple of sketchbooks. I was trained as an artist, and I keep running sketchbooks. I have one just devoted to trains, in my layout designs. And I usually started out, I think this one started out as different ideas on pencil. And then then I had to try to fit it into the given space. So and then I discovered a program that works on iPad, and also they have a version for iPhone. It's called Procreate. It's a drawing program that you use with Apple Pencil, and it worked very well for me. I was able to color code things and break things out and do things to scale. That's how I started. That's how I did the design work for the layout. And then the buildings and stuff, I went around and photographed buildings, like industrial buildings, and then printed them to scale, and then just glued it to foam core. That's how I do the buildings and stuff.
All right. Chuck, how did you do your design work? What did you do to help design your layout?
Well, I just kind of build as I go. I hate to say I don't really design anything out, but my latest layout, I scrapped my short line and I going with the chassis system line to Buffalo, and I've just been going off of maps and laying the track out how it's actually was laid out in the 1980s is what I've been going with. And I'm almost to Buffalo.
So,
I got about 10 more feet to go.
So the Rockwell Railroad is not going to be part of your new layout then? Is that what you mean by you scrapped your short line? Or
Yeah. It might later, like do a later thing where, like when the B&P took over CSX up there, I might do something with it, but just being my railroad. But I went with I just kind of got drunk one night and decided to tear everything out and redo it.
You're modeling, the area you're modeling is an area that I wish I had explored a little more back in the day, because I would basically go to Driftwood, for as far west as I would usually go in my rail fanning trips. I wish I had followed the B&P out toward Du Bois.
Yeah.
But I never got out that way until much later when there's not much there anymore. Like that, what's the name of that tower that's still there? And is it Falls Creek?
Falls Creek. Yeah, you got Falls Creek, and then south of Du Bois, you got C&M.
Yeah, I've seen both of those. They're falling pretty much, and it amazes me. They're made of concrete, so they'll probably be there forever, but the wooden parts of it are really starting to deteriorate badly.
Yeah. Concrete with barrel tile roofs.
Yep.
Falling apart.
Okay, Jimmy.
That's what I'm doing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chuck. Yeah.
Oh,
Jimmy,
that's all right.
Yep. Jimmy, what do you got for design?
Well, much the same. I actually really didn't have a system I used when I first put down my first stretch of rail. I had a vision in my head of what I wanted compared to an overhead view from Google Maps. Of course, at that point, once I started getting further down the line, I've had to go back and redo some of my track work because it was either a combination of I didn't like it or it didn't work for what I needed at the time.
Okay, and Brad, to finish up this one before we go to the last question, what design are you using, or are you using anything for your layout for the Northen?
Yeah, I use a program called AnyRail. I used to do pencil and paper drawings on graph paper. This is the Northen, once again, is the first layout I've used this program called AnyRail. My wife Missy bought it for me for my birthday one year, and I started playing around with it, and I realized it has databases for every track, every track brand that's available. So for instance, I pick Cato, and you lay out your track sections and build a whole layout plan in its 3D even. So you have both a top, an overhead view of it, but you can also see the grades that you lay out. And after you get everything laid in, then it'll generate a track list for you. So when you know exactly which track sections you need to buy. So that has been a great time saver for me too. And the one thing that led to it led to something kind of funny. I changed the design, the part where the Bucktail Summit grade is, which that's if people have seen my videos where I childishly roll cars down to see how fast they'll go and how far they'll roll. That's the section that I'm talking about. That area was originally going to be, I think, 14 feet wide, and I decided I wanted it narrower, so it's 12 feet. But that necessitated increasing the grade from 2% to 2.1%. And I did it. I tried to do it on the straight, which it is, but it's right before a curve. And that is the curve that has famously now become known as Barnes curve, because my friend Mike Barnes was here trying out 2 new scale trains, SD40-2s, and hooked a pretty good sized train up, and it got stuck there on Barnes curve. So of course everybody that was here had to laugh at him. But yeah, that's why that curve is the toughest. I mean, if you have an engine that can make it around that with a train, it'll go anywhere on my layout. But we had to tie some helpers on for Mike that night.
Okay.
So yeah, any rail is the program that I use. Yep.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to wrap this up with a little speed round here as we close out tonight. We're going to go with Jimmy first. Jimmy, what are you having trouble finding? Are you going to purchasing lately? Are you buying used, new, or are you having to do 3D print? What are you having trouble with, Jimmy?
Well, pretty much.
Okay, I think we lost Jimmy. How about Chuck? What do you got, Chuck? What are you having trouble with?
Since I'm doing a phototypical layout now, I'm having trouble finding just about everything. I've been having to scratch build bridges and all that. So I've been buying a lot of used at train shows and like kit bash and everything together. So I'd really love to get into 3D printing and figure it out. And then, so I could do my stations along the line, design them and print them up and all that.
Is it modern stuff or is it?
No, it's old.
Older.
It's a line, a lot of them stations were built like 1900.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you're trying for that older look and in scale and having some trouble buying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably going to have to 3D print it.
How about you, Fran? What are you having trouble finding right now?
Well, I like Chuck. I love to kit bash and take old things and make new things out of them. But it's the details on the buildings and structures and locomotives. And I'm finding I'm going to 3D printing. I'm not 3D printing, but I find people that'll do it with me. I worked with CMR. Like I model the main line on the main working line on my layout is the Union Railroad, and they used to run things they called buffaloes, which were nobody makes them, but I worked with CMR to develop a chassis that'll fit over a RS3, and
excellent.
which has the same wheelbase, and it's starting to work really well, but it's up to me to come up with the railings and the horns and all the little details.
Right.
But the shells are looking pretty good right now.
Excellent. Let's go back to Jimmy real quick as we finish this up. Jimmy, what are you having trouble with?
Modern equipment, like modern vehicles, modern buildings, etc. So what I've done to remedy that is I have actually started learning to do my own 3D designs, 3D print myself, and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Well, guys, hey, it's been great. You guys have been a great set of yard masters. We hope to have you guys back really soon. And Brad and I will be back in just a moment to finish our final thought. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Brad, what a great show tonight. A lot of information. Great guest. Chris was absolutely wonderful. Good to hear from him this evening. And I kept that in my pocket. I didn't go Pico out on him on the Yard Masters. We had enough people to push that product for us. And I just had a great evening. And there was a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot too, and I hope our listeners do. We had some good discussion there about track. A really good point came out from Fran about how to connect code 82 to code 55. I had heard of, and I saw, I can't even remember where it was. I saw it done once, with that trick where you crush one end of the rail joiner. But so yeah, the track discussion was good. We had pretty varied discussion. We had an HO guy with Jimmy in here telling us about his fast tracks turnout, hand-built turnouts. Fran uses a variety of turnouts. And, and then Chuck and I pretty much standardize mine. I think Chuck said he pretty much sticks to this, tries to standardize as much as he can. So, yeah, good discussion on track. Then we had an interesting discussion on having sounds on your layout of all kinds, not just sound-equipped locomotives, but we got into some discussion about talking detectors and about ambient, sounds that surround different industries and different parts of your layout. And Chuck even mentioned smells at one point, which that might be something interesting for the future. And
well, I didn't want to say anything at the time because I know we have so many guests, but I used to work for a company that worked at the Procter and Gamble plant down in Cincinnati, and I worked for. We had rail cars go into the Ivory soap factory, so you can only imagine what that smelled like.
Yeah.
and the Crisco factory was across the street, so you had Crisco oil on one side, and so you had all the lard and everything on one side, and the soap on the other, and so it was a lot of different smells within 2 city blocks.
I'm sure that would. Yeah, we used to have a Stroman's bakery here, and it was always something else to go by there and smell the fresh baked bread and stuff. But yeah. And so we had a discussion about layout design and varied methods there, from pencil and paper all the way up to using that AnyRail program that I mentioned, which is almost like, really, it's like CAD, computer assisted design, in a way, because it's fully 3D and everything. But
isn't it amazing how the people are, some of these very detailed laid out layouts are done the old fashioned way, pen and paper, pencil, and then you got another guy right next to him with a laptop right there next.
Well, I thought, I thought what Chuck said was cool too about how he does it. He doesn't work out a plan kind of in advance. He takes a look at what space he has available and, knows what he wants to fit in there. And he must be able to visualize stuff really well, before actually starting to build, because we saw that layout that he had before in that shed. It was like 5 levels, and he had everything laid out really nicely. So he obviously, knows what he's doing in that respect. With just going, I would feel like I was flying by the seat of my pants, but clearly he has, like I said, he must be able to envision what his finished product is going to look like. I have to see it either on paper or on my. That's the nice thing about AnyRail. You can print it off, and then you have that visual. I'm very visual with stuff. I'm not good at creating images in my head. Obviously, I think Chuck probably is good at doing that. And then did you have anything else to say about that, or?
No, Brad. I was going to say the last one we had. Everyone needs everything.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was nothing that someone didn't need.
Right. I didn't chime in on that, but it is kind of a funny story. I need a Pennsylvania Railroad 442 Atlantic E6. Nobody makes that in N scale, and I've been trying to kit bash. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to figure out a way to get it kit bashed, and then Broadway Limited is going to come out with one, because that has happened 3 different times to me. I kit bashed Pennsylvania M1 Mountain, got that just about done, and then Broadway Limited finally released theirs. And then I wanted a J1, so I broke down and bought a really expensive Overland Models brass J1, and guess what Broadway Limited announced they were coming out with shortly after that. So yeah, that's the one thing I'm missing. I did find a shell that somebody 3D printed on before Shapeways, that 3D printing clearinghouse website that they kind of went bankrupt. But I was able to purchase 2 really nice E6 Atlantic shells. I just have to find a mechanism that'll sit under that. But we'll see how that goes. But the 3D printing, to make a long story short, has really just revolutionized things for us, because like Jimmy was mentioning, he had trouble finding modern vehicles. Well, if you can go online and download a 3D file of that, and if you have a good 3D printer and you know what you're doing, you can print one off for yourself. It's just, that's something that I haven't really looked into yet. I don't know if I ever will. I think I find 3D printing, this is where I'm at right now, and I'll probably change my mind someday, but like a swimming pool. It's nice to have a neighbor who has a swimming pool because then you can go swimming and it's up to them to clean and do all the chemicals. That's where I'm at with 3D printing. I'm glad I have friends that have 3D printers and I don't have to figure it out.
I love when someone says, "Hey, I did this for you," and I'm like, "Yeah." And it's almost like you're in the back alley. Yeah, thanks, man. And you walk away.
Remember that time we were at a train show and Tom Catalano surprised us with real nice. I have that truck he gave us painted up, and it will be on my layout someplace. I think this summer I'm actually going to start building the Northumberland section of my layout because I want to be able to. So that was the other thing I couldn't find too while we're at it. I couldn't find a N scale model of the station where we used the Front Street station where you and I used to meet back in the day to plan what we were going to do. So our Scott Lister, our Iron City member, who was an S scaler, believe it or not, but he was willing to build a beautiful N scale replica of that station, and he even put lighting in it and everything. And that's my summer project. I want to build a really nice looking town of Northumberland to surround that, and I'm going to have to be on my game at kit bashing those buildings because if I don't do a good job kit bashing it, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb next to that beautiful thing that Scott put together for me.
So, Brad, as we're wrapping up, I just want to say one more time, thank you, Chris Ketch, for being our special guest. Did a great job.
We forgot to mention him. That's right. Yeah, Chris is a natural. This was the first time he ever did anything like this, and man, he just jumped right in and did a really nice job telling us his adventures and misadventures in the model railroading hobby. And I was particularly impressed with all the research he did on, the prototype railroads that he's using for his freelance. So thank you to Chris as well.
And Brad, a couple of our members said, "Hey, can you start doing some links?" And I said, "Yeah." And I think we're going to try to do is put some of the links on the actual page when we do our publication of the podcast. The links will be in our edit notes, and then we'll try to do something actually on the Iron City page when we publish. We'll try to throw something on there when we do. Hey, the podcast is ready for Iron City members. We'll have some links for you. We won't be able to do all the links, but because
Chris, I think, as I recall, Chris said he does have some links for you. So that's
and we'll have that for you, and we'll hopefully be able to publish. So, Brad, I think we'll wrap up tonight and tell everybody a little bit about. I won't give away too much, but I think we might have some OGs coming on the next show. So that'll be kind of our hint for the next episode if I can grab all those guys together. So
OGs.
The OGs, the original
Iron. Yes. Yeah, that's those are the guys that we were able to find very early on in this process, and Iron City would not be what it is without those guys. I can tell you that. That's just, there's no two ways about it.
So I'm really looking forward to that podcast and getting those guys together. So, but as we close out, Brad, let me tell everybody where they can listen to our podcast. So we are now on Apple, YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Player FM, and Listen Notes. And Brad, we've had some great downloads so far, and we really appreciate everyone listening.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for that. I probably am sounding like a broken record, but we do appreciate the fact that people are listening, people are downloading. So and keep the suggestions coming. Keep them coming, because we have, especially with this one, some of you guys who noticed that the sound issues we were having early on, I think we've been able to clean that up. We don't have a final product made yet, but I'm anxious to see when this is released to get more feedback from some of you guys who maybe have some more experience editing sound files and putting stuff like this together, because this is pretty new to Pat and I. So, any help and suggestions are always appreciated, but even more appreciated is the fact that you take time out of your day to listen to us. And so thank you from the bottom of our hearts for that. That really helps keep us going. Right, Pat?
That's right. And Brad, we are publishing every other Thursday, so look for us. Actually, we try to cheat and get it out a little bit on Wednesday night for our folks and in the UK and Australia, so you actually get it early Thursday morning your time. And so we really appreciate our listeners. And until then, get ready for episode 4. We appreciate you listening to episode 3. And we'll talk to you next time. This is Pat and Brad for the Iron City Roundhouse Report.
All right, rail fans, that's all the steam we've got for this edition of the Iron City Roundhouse Report. Until next time, keep those gauges green, your couplers connected, and may your layouts always run smoothly. Happy railroading.